All of the views and opinions expressed here are those of the individual speaking and may not be representative of Konig American. At times, language may be considered vulgar. Listener discretion is suggested.
You are now listening to the Konig Behind the Wheel podcast.
All right, welcome to a special episode of the Behind the Wheel podcast. I'm Scott, I'm the marketing director for Konig Wheels. With me is Joey Redmond. Joey's the founder and owner of Wrecked Magazine, which is an all-drift digital magazine. He's been published in over 20 automotive magazines and has built special SEMA vehicle projects for OEs such as Hyundai and Ford. After each FD round, Joey and I will get together, run through some of the thoughts from the event, and this will be in addition to our regular podcast format, so make sure to tune into the next one, which will be after Atlanta. So, Joey, welcome.
What up?
I was tuned into the live stream, just watching our Pro 1 guys, Kevin, Lawrence, and Matt VanKirk. I'm not a huge fan of the ovals. Nothing against them technically. In fact, I think what's interesting about the ovals is that they look so simple, but they really are very technical. I just don't really find them to be that exciting. And it's kind of the same thing with wall. But it seems,
do you not like Irwindale?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just a thing. Like, I don't know. I get, I am able to get out to wall. I don't know, oval wise. I don't know. There's just something different than watching something like, Long Beach or something like that. And then I think that maybe for the average person, and maybe I'm like totally off, but the oval looks super easy because it's kind of just like, it's not incredibly complicated. But there's just a lot of technical aspect to it, especially with the walls and the high banks.
I think if you ask most drivers, I think Long Beach would, be far and away the winner of what is the easiest track to drive on over the course of the year.
You think so?
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, unless you're talking to a driver who's concerned about hitting a wall and crashing for whatever reason, like it's a new car, or they're out of their talent depth. But when you look at like these guys, the Forsberg, OD, Matt Field level drivers, I don't know. The pavement change that used to exist, I think, was one of the biggest challenges there, and now that that's gone, I don't really see what is like Long Beach is there because of the occasion, right? It's on the streets. It's Grand Prix weekend. There's all the stuff built out. But I think if you put that track in Ohio and just like built that little corner, like it's not very appealing from like a how hard is it to drift to this course type level.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I get that point.
It's really low speed too. Like if you're there in person, it's a little bit masked, I think, in the like on the live stream and some things like that, but it's really low speed.
Yeah. I don't know. I felt like, so more than ever this year, I think OSW really put the screws to some of these teams. It was rough and tough right from practice.
Well, see, to me, I think, where I think the banks are interesting is I think a lot of times the banks deploy separate challenges to drivers and teams, which I think is a pretty solid argument in general. Like, I just think that having different venues and different styles of tracks is great. Like, nobody wants to watch NASCAR run 43 weeks on ovals. That's why, they add these road course races. They have Sonoma, to provide a different challenge. Same with I don't know, IndyCar basically is out of business in my book, but same idea. Like they're trying to generate, like, I think you need to provide different challenges to keep the point of a race series is to allow the best team to win. And I think for the best team to win, you have to, it just can't be the same thing every weekend.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Banks are tough, man, especially like coming in high off the wall. It seems like, one little touch can put you, just ricochet the car right back into the wall. That bank really just sucks you in. We saw it with Denofa, that's for sure.
Yeah, and now you being more familiar with I would say Wall's bank though too is like it's much more intense than
OSW.
Yeah, like I know off the top of my head, Wall's banking is like 15 degrees. I'm trying to look real quick to find Orlando, but I don't see it. But it's definitely not quite as aggressive as a bank for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't. It seemed like a lot of teams took a strong beating this week.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, there was a lot of drivers who I think lost their battle because they didn't know what tire management was. I think the Wordhouse guys were a perfect example. I don't know why they didn't run into the issue last year, but it was clear to me that they were just out of juice at the end of their second lap, which is interesting because then you could argue that qualifying higher actually becomes a disadvantage.
Oh, yeah, that is interesting.
Because if you were to qualify really high, you're always going first. But now, if you have great tires for a follow lap, and then your tires blow out while you're the leader, well, it doesn't matter as much, right? Like, because a lot of, like, if you go back and look at the Forsberg and Pityor battle, Pityor just, like, literally just can't keep up at the end of his chase lap, where if you're the slower driver with, crappy tires, it doesn't necessarily hurt you as much as if you're in the, if you're in the follow.
Yeah. No, I get that. I don't know. I'm kind of biased, I guess, but I thought what was really interesting was watching VanKirk. What do you think about Matt? I mean, all right, we sponsor him, but like, what do you think about Matt as far as his driving, his skill level after seeing him? This is a second event as in Pro 1.
Yeah, I think he looks really good. Like, he's actually one of the few drivers that I'm not super familiar with from like a Pro-Am level.
Right.
Just because he kind of ran Pro-Am in like the area with probably like the least amount of Pro-Am media.
For me, this is my thing. You know, when I got a chance, obviously, to watch him last year closely because we were invested in him in Pro 2, and we came on with him right after Atlanta. And what's interesting about him is that he just has this, it feels like this natural talent to, you can call it aggression, but it seems like his focus and his ability to kind of maintain in that environment was pretty good. And watching him go into FD2 last year, and that was his first, kind of entry in, I thought he handled himself incredibly well. And then obviously he finished off third, I believe. Yeah, he was third. Now watching him, he's 2 events into Pro. I mean, anybody can make the argument that the jump between Pro 2 and Pro at this point is a huge leap. It's not, the competition level is, obviously much more intense, and so is the skill level. And I just watched him have really great moments of confidence and fluidity. He had a great second qualifying run of an 89, and then his lead run against Aasbo was, really very good. The only thing I would say that's probably that I see, and you'll probably have a better take on this, is his weakness is, I think the car is incredibly underpowered for being in Pro. I just don't think the car makes enough power to stay with him, especially in the chase run situation.
Probably. What is he around, like 600 horsepower?
I think it's like 580, 600, something like that.
Yeah. He probably needs more power. He's just got to figure out a way to gain more mechanical grip with less power. I mean, all that stuff goes over my head really quick, but
yeah,
horsepower isn't necessarily the thing that is making your car go the fastest in drifting.
Sure.
Especially nowadays. Forsberg, I think, has probably one of the most underpowered cars on the grid. And he's had one of the most underpowered cars on the grid for a long time, and he's won championships. So, like, horsepower isn't necessarily like that hard and fast answer.
Yeah. And Matt, what's interesting was Matt did say that he had an interview on live stream, and that one of the things he did say was he actually felt that he was faster than most cars, even with that 580 horsepower, because he just had enough forward bite. So, I mean, he clearly understands it and recognizes it. I watched those chase runs, and it just seems like maybe it's not that. It's like maybe I'm reading it as he's underpowered and can't keep up with these guys when he's got to chase them. But maybe it's just that he just wasn't comfortable in that situation yet. Seems like a lot more people obviously are more comfortable in the lead position because there's not anybody they're trying to match or stay with,
Yeah, and I mean, you're also talking about he's lost 2 battles to the guy who has won 33% of the events he's ever run in Formula D in the last 4 years. So, I mean, I'd like to see him maybe paired up against somebody else before we say he's out of his depth or lost. Like, Aasbo isn't really a fair litmus test, and unfortunately, he beat Essa, but he beat Essa by, having a car that worked. So it wasn't exactly like a display of his talent.
No, but no, I'm with you. Here's the thing, though. I mean, first off, if you're going to take an L, it's not a bad place to take an L. And I don't know. I just think that I still think that his driving, he showed a lot of poise and a lot of moments of clarity, especially in the second event. So take that for what it is.
I agree. I mean, I think the biggest problem he's going to have at becoming Rookie of the Year is Dirk Stratton. I mean, that's probably his one guy that he's got to be on the lookout for. So I mean, hopefully, in my opinion, in the dream world, they can just meet in Atlanta, and we can kind of see a battle of the rookies.
I'm pretty impressed with Dirk. I really think that. I mean, he looked really good even in his first event. He looked really good. I don't know.
Too much confidence. I mean, crashed.
So yeah, all right. But so did a lot of people. That wasn't he wasn't the only one there. I don't really want to get into the list of names of people that crashed, but there was a lot of tagging going on. What'd you think of Kearney? I mean, listen, he's aggressive. I mean, we sponsored him. When he drove that 240, probably. It's got to be 7 years ago, at least. I've always remembered him.
Remember that thing?
Yeah, that was I think it was the first year that he came over to run FD, maybe second, but I think it's first. He's always aggressive, but I feel like watching him, especially at OSW, I felt like I really saw so much more control. It just seems like he's really growing into all the aspects of driving.
Yeah, he had the best tandem run for me for the weekend. One of the judges didn't agree. Brian Eggert, I think, was trying to screw him out of his victory. But
right.
Ryan and Andy both agreed. I think if you watch his battle against Hilbrun, it wasn't perfect by any means.
Yeah.
But it's the best battle of the weekend. I mean, there was not a lot of people who could figure out how to chase on the bank. Even James Deane really never found anyone's door in the chase. And so I think that battle's probably going to get forgotten, or a lot of people didn't watch it because it was in the top 32.
Yeah.
But when I went back and I watched the whole event this morning, and I don't know, I just wrote down great tandem follow. And then as I watched the whole event, I don't think that I had seen anything that came close to that. And thinking about it, Deane Kearney, I think, was a rookie in 2010. So he's actually been around for a long time at this point, even though it seems like he's kind of a new guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I'm biased just because, like I said, I remember him from when he first came in. So I like Deane. I think he's exciting to watch, and he brings a lot of flavor to it. But it's incredible how fast that car is. Just watching it, I mean, it makes up distance. It makes up distance super quick. It's kind of scary, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting. Thinking about the 2010 rookie class is kind of throwing back a little bit. That's interesting as well because that was also Aasbo's rookie year.
Right.
And that's also when James Deane made a 3-event debut in Formula D.
See, I don't even remember that.
He came in. Yeah, James Deane came in if you remember that really crappy Falcon S15 that Calvin Wan drove and crashed a lot.
Right.
It was just a Falcon Liberty S15. It didn't have much to it, but then he Darren McNamara, if you remember him, I think helped kind of facilitate James Deane coming over. And Deane basically, he ran Long Beach, and then he ran the last two events of the year, which I want to say back then was Vegas and Irwindale.
Right.
I think that sounds right. He kind of skipped like that middle East Coast tour, but I kind of went off the rails a little bit there. But
I was just taking it all in.
I think Deane's really good. He's lacking that like something. I don't know what that something is, but like there's something there that like prevents him from being a champion. And if he can like figure out what that is and like eliminate it, I think he could easily above and beyond. But it's like, I don't know, it's like not there for him for one reason or the other.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you. I really like watching him. I always have. I just think he's a lot of fun to watch. I mean, I just think and this was, I think, a great thing for development of it. I just think that he was incredibly more controlled, and I don't know that I can technically call anything out to provide anything to that argument, except the fact that, like, when I watched it, I was like, wow, there's definitely an extreme amount of poise that he's developed. What do you think about the whole Odie Matt Field feud thing? I don't really know that I was into it from that perspective, but it seems a lot of people are really taking to that.
Well, I think it's like manufactured. I guess,
right. I mean, again,
obviously, right? Like it's put together by I think that's Donut Media, who makes those videos. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's Donut Media. Yeah, and then so they kind of have this whole thing where it's like Odie versus Field, and like we're teammates, but we want to beat each other and we hate each other. And the videos are pretty interesting. I've watched a couple over the years, but then they met this weekend, so like I'm assuming Donuts probably created some great content from that. But when I was investigating statistics to like kind of like look through some notes, like Matt Field's never beat Odie. In fact, after this weekend, Odie has beat him 4 times. So it's like, I don't know, like, is that a real rivalry kind of at that point? Like, when you think in like other sports, like for there to be a rivalry, like both teams have to win at some point. Like,
right.
Like if you're, if, looking locally, right, UCLA versus USC, like if UCLA for the last 111 years beat USC, like it wouldn't really be much of a rivalry. It'd just be a, annual slaughter.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think Field needs to get that monkey off his back at some point to like, I don't know, just like you gotta build a rivalry, right? Like I think one of the biggest rivalries in FD, like when you want to talk about like a battle that gets me excited, would be like Chris Forsberg versus Vaughn Jr.
Well, okay, yeah, sure.
Something crazy just happens every time those guys run. Like if you look back through the history books, like there's never been a battle with those two where I'm like, man, that was uneventful. I mean, even this weekend, they managed to crash into each other when there was like a red flag, right? Like it wasn't even like a part of the event at that point. So yeah, I just, I like the rivalry. I like the angle. I just, it'd be ideal if we could get like maybe a little victory going from Vaughn Jr.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like the RTR crew there had a rough showing this event. I think they kind of just need like a hard reset. You know what I mean? Maybe Atlanta will do it for them. Between Chelsea kind of having the issue where he stuffed it in practice, then they fixed the car, came out, he made a qualifying run, and I think he got like a decent score, like an 87 or something. Then I guess they had some mechanical, from what I heard from his interview, I guess he had some mechanical issue that occurred during that run, and they weren't able to get the car back together for the next day. So it's kind of strange. I mean, I think Chelsea's, first off, and I really like Chelsea as a driver. I think he's super exciting to watch. I don't know why I liked him so much better driving wise when he was in the BMW. Is that silly?
I don't know. I think he drives the same. I mean, maybe do you just like BMWs more than
Mustangs? No,
Mustangs? Is
I
that
don't.
like
I don't
your
know that it
import
is. No, listen, and I think that the Mustangs are cool. I mean, I really like their three wheeling. I think that the cars make exciting power. They have really good angle, and he's an aggressive driver. I mean, he's a lot of fun to watch. But it seemed like lately, especially this event, they had a rough showing. Those teams deserved a lot of beer afterwards. They must have been really thrashing.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to imagine for them not to get Chelsea's car working, that it's got to be some kind of catastrophic failure. I mean, I would go down the path of saying engine or transmission are the only two things I can think. I mean, they're a professional team; they bring out
everything.
Right. And then what an interesting tie-in with that is, if you remember, years ago, Vaughn blew a motor in Seattle and almost missed Las Vegas. It was like, I think it was the same kind of situation. It was like a 2 or 3 week, window for the events. Now, Vaughn's whole operation is based out of North Carolina, so that'll probably help them
going to Atlanta.
And getting ready for Atlanta. But I mean, there's a chance if it is like some catastrophic failure, I mean, they might be making it to Atlanta.
But don't teams, especially of their caliber, have? I mean, we know that obviously they have spare parts probably 2 and 3 times over, but engines, powertrains, drivetrains. I mean, you don't think that there's spares? I mean, loaded in there.
I think they have parts, I guess when I say catastrophic failure, like let's say like a block cracks or
sure.
Right, my understanding, and they might not have the same engine supplier. I could be filling this podcast with total BS, but if I remember right, when he lost that motor years ago, it's he's running like Roush Yates motors, and so like I think there's proprietary stuff involved in those. Like, I don't think they're just given engines, right?
I understand.
So, right. I think it's one of those things where it's like, put this motor in, here's a thing to replace a valve, here's everything. But like, I think there are like kind of some restrictions and limitations on like what can be given to them and like what can be held in their possession, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So the red flag that Vaughn had for during the Vaughn Forsberg match, that was because of a cone issue, right?
Correct.
All right. Do me a favor. I don't have a clue. What is the cone rule all about?
So it kind of goes back a long time. Now, I think the most simplistic thing is basically they built lanes. Okay. And so the lanes are separated by a cone. And the lanes basically push the lead driver towards like the wall, right?
Sure.
And so there was an issue actually with Deane Kearney and a driver Darren McNamara in Seattle in the finals one year, where basically Deane the whole event came down that long straightaway in Seattle and had been working his way right, and kind of like almost pushing the follow driver like off the track.
Yeah.
So in the final battle, Darren McNamara just didn't, like, all the other drivers were kind of like turning to get out of his way. Darren McNamara was like, I'm going to drive straight, like this is my lane, and they crashed and the battle never happened. So like it's kind of like the Deane Kearney rule is these cones. And so basically if you touch a cone, a red light triggers on the track. Orlando's kind of an easy track to identify that because it's a circle track, so they can just like flick on the the lights that are built into the track on the wall there.
Yeah.
So Forsberg tapped a cone. Like I think it even stayed in its chalk box, but he just like nicked it. They threw the light, and then Vaughn didn't see the light and literally just plowed into the back of Chris before the battle even started. But like I guess that's kind of like how that cone rule originated, to the best of my recollection. And so the reason why they call it a violation is like you're supposed to pretend that those cones are like a K rail.
Yeah, I get
Right.
it.
They obviously don't use a K rail because we'd have even less battles than we already have now.
Right.
So it's kind of symbolic thing where it's like you hit the cone and basically it's like a strike, kind of similar to like tennis, right? Like you can like miss a serve and you get another chance. And funny enough, last year or 2 years ago in Canada, we actually had a guy hit the cone 3 times in a row and disqualified himself from competition.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
if you're gonna go out, I guess that's one way.
yeah, it was tough too. It was at Formula Drift Canada, and he was like the only Canadian driver competing. So it was like that was kind of a buzzkill on the weekend.
Speaking of buzzkill, how about that Deane Wang face off? That's a buzzkill.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really like a big S chassis fan boy. I've owned one.
Because you rather run the Mustangs.
Yeah, exactly. I favor the
Right.
right. My only 240 SX I ever owned didn't even have Konig wheels, so we probably shouldn't talk about that thing.
Damn.
But moving on. I don't know. Even after owning one, and someone we all know crashing it will remain nameless.
Right, I got you.
It just it had Konig wheels then when it was crashed.
You know what? That wasn't the point. I was looking for you
to.
Okay. Nothing to. For a moment, let's just bring a moment of clarity here. That had nothing to do with the wheels.
No. It had to do with the driver.
Oh, jeez.
Jeez.
You're not. This isn't making it any better.
Sorry. Anyway, back on track. Even though what I was trying to say before I went on that tirade is that even as a 240 owner, I've never been like a 240 like fan. Like I'm not like super into the S chassis and posting on Zilvia all day and
yeah,
I don't know, whatever cool 240 kids do this year. But I think Forrest Wang and James Deane are probably two of the most like symbolic and like cool guy like S chassis owners.
Right.
Forrest Wang I think really embodies like an American version, like a little more flair, a little more showy, candy paint. And I think James Deane kind of represents the European version of that, like, no sense of humor, no nonsense, like, all kind of go no show a little bit, like we're going to get down to business.
I like that.
Yeah, so I think everyone wants to see these two worlds collide, right? Like, is it the style king or is it Mr. Consistent who can like beat each other out? I think there's also an appeal that like they have the same car. And then we should have seen the battle in Long Beach. James Deane broke his car running into Chris Forsberg, I believe. And so then he couldn't compete against Force. Actually, it couldn't have been Forsberg. Whoever he crashed into them, couldn't compete. And then, so everyone was really hyped for the battle this weekend. We saw part of it. Deane led and really kind of left Forrest a little bit, which was impeccable because he maintained, I would say, the same amount of angle as Forrest. I think James during the tandem battle was just a lot more throttle committed. Like it really shows that like James is like 100% throttle all the time. Like
right.
He's just, which is amazing. So I think there was that, and then on Forrest's lead run. Oh, sorry. What?
No, I was gonna say like that run they were there. Like even with the wall tap, I mean, he was making it through. I guess the car shut off or had some mechanical issue.
I guess like
coming right into the infield or something.
Right when it was about to be like, oh, this is what we want to see, like because no one other than Deane Kearney was really tandeming close on the bank. So they were coming off the bank. I was ready to see the whole thing, and Forrest car down. So
I mean, it's kind of. I mean, listen, with such commitment, Forrest stayed in it. It was almost like that wall tap didn't even really phase him a whole bunch. He stayed in it. He brought it through, and I thought that we were on to something. And then all of a sudden, the car just seemed to lose power as it kind of went into the infield. So that was kind of disheartening.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason that car seems to like to shut down mid tandem battle when he's leading. I don't know why, but they should probably fix that at some point.
I guess Forsberg was probably happy with this weekend. He got to finally add another trophy to the shelf there.
Yeah, I mean, man, it's taken a long time. Like, if you went and visited my top 10 things at FormulaD.com, you like that plug right there? That's pretty good.
It was a sweet plug. In case anybody didn't know, he writes 10 points on FormulaD.com.
Yeah,
there you go. The source themselves.
I'm getting a big commission check for that one, I hope. But I calculated how many days it had been since he had won an event, and like I thought it was wrong. So like I did it like 6 more times because I was like, "There's no way it's been this long since he's won."
Did your number change on those 6 calculations?
It didn't ever, and so I was like, "Man." So it's been 1,485 days between his last 2 victories.
Now, keep in mind one thing. He won a championship in between there. Without winning an event, he won a championship. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so in those 1,485 days, he stood on the podium 14 times.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
He podiumed a lot in second and third place.
Yeah. He's such an incredible driver, and he's so calculated, and he's so consistent and reliable.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I mean, that's kind of like, I think, almost to his hindrance. Like, it makes him a boring driver. Like, you never see Chris Forsberg throw his car into a turn and go, "Oh man, I wonder if he's gonna make it." Or like,
right. Yeah.
You know, I think him and Aasbo are both kind of the same. Like, they're so consistent at such a high level, it almost takes away from their performance.
Yeah. Aasbo's car is tough to watch sometimes. Not all the time. I don't mean anything bad about it. I'm not talking about its size or anything like that. I'm just talking about, I think how short it is. Sometimes, like when he's getting angle and stuff like that, it's almost tough to see exactly the position the car may be in. It's weird how
the
car
like
gets.
It 'cause it's a Toyota Corolla.
It's gorgeous.
Come on.
Listen, I don't know what's better, the fact that started
Toyota's
as a front-wheel drive car,
podcast, right?
What?
I said Toyota's not sponsoring this podcast, right? We're okay to badmouth Corolla.
I mean, I guess, but I mean, if they want to. You have my digits. There's 7 people listening right now. I don't think Toyota is one of them.
Hey, you never know.
I think 2 of them might be in our office, so that's 5 other people that are listening. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Sure my mom's gonna listen.
What's that?
I said, I'm sure my mom's going to listen.
Oh, that's great. Hi, Mrs. Redmond. That's wonderful. We'll get you one of those magnets that you can put on the fridge. Like I was on Konig's podcast. You know,
I think it's great.
That's fantastic. We got to start getting something for people that come on this thing because they're doing it with blind faith. Interesting. Forsberg gets a victory.
Mm-hmm.
One of your points that you did at FormulaD.com was directly related to Aasbo's legacy, right? So,
yeah, I mean, legacy seems like a strong word. Did I use that word?
You did.
Oh, I feel like legacy is something that like for dead people, but
that's not fair, right? Because listen, you start building legacy, and he is an incredible driver, and I think he deserves the accolades now. Why wait till you're gone, right?
I guess that's true. I mean, Michael Jordan has a legacy. He's still alive.
Yeah, he does. Bill Cosby has a legacy too.
Oh boy.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. I tried so hard not to, but
really, we're gonna go there.
No, we can veer right now away from it. But I just wanted to bring that up.
Remind me off air. I got something funny to show you about that.
Fair enough. Holding out from the fans, all 4.5 of them. But yeah, so kind of go through that point because I think it's super interesting, and it's something that I immediately didn't think of or spot before I read, your comment on it.
Got it. So basically, Frederick Aasbo is the most winning driver in Formula Drift history. He's won 10 events. There are 3 drivers that have won 9. Sam Houbinet, who hasn't won an event since 2007.
Right. Well, doesn't compete anymore, so that helps.
Vaughn Gittin Jr., who I don't think's won an event since 2014.
Wow.
And Forsberg, who has 9, won his 9th 3 days ago, a week ago. However, to cover all the bases from when this is posted.
Right.
And so in that time, so when Chris Forsberg won his first event, his last event, which was 2014 Formula Drift Long Beach, Aasbo had 0 career victories. 0.
Yeah.
In fact, so basically, in this cold spell that Chris Forsberg has had, Frederick Aasbo has basically kind of come out of nowhere a little bit and basically just put his stamp on Formula Drift. Aasbo's been around since 2010, but he didn't win an event until 2014, and then to think from 2014 to present day that he's won 10 events, and that includes the Daigo Saito years, where Daigo, I think, ran for 3 seasons and won 6 events. And then you've also got to consider James Deane showed up last year and won 4 of the 8 events. So there's not a lot of margin for other people to sweep up victories there. And so I don't know. I find it really impressive that Aasbo has managed to take 10 wins from Wall Speedway. I want to say was his first victory in 2014, and then his most recent one, he actually won Long Beach, which was the first round this year, which surpassed him into being the most winning driver in history.
Yeah. I mean, it's still not. I mean, I don't want to say he came from nowhere. I mean, it was a good long stint, and he's a incredibly skilled driver. So, and it's just because Chris didn't win, I mean, all those podiums, I don't think anybody's questioning the fact that he's that good. He's incredible. You said that very not sure.
I don't know. I mean, to me, I'm a winner. I don't know. Second place is first loser. I don't know. Yeah, I guess second place is nice, but it's to me, it would be almost more frustrating to be that close to winning and not winning.
I guess. I wonder if these guys are truly bothered by that or not. I mean, to me, I would imagine they are, but I
think you have to be a race car driver, though.
Yeah.
There's 32 guys in the grid, and I think 31 guys call bullshit. Right?
Yeah. No, it's true, because there's a lot of people out there. I don't really want to mention anybody's names. I don't want anybody that I really don't know personally being really mad at me, but I listen to a lot of people talk and put posts up, and some of the things, not everybody can be the best. So clearly, when you're saying you are the best, or all you have to do is get out of your own way. I mean, yeah, I get I get what you're saying to that, but then there's this other piece, which is if you were the best, you would win. So I don't know. I'm just saying I understand the kind of the psychology of it, that you have to really believe that you're that good to be able to honestly be competitive. You can't step in there thinking you're going to lose, because then, well, you already lost. So you have to have that mindset. And I think anybody that's really, really competitive, and that's the difference. If you watch any sport, there's some people that are just drone, in the before the buzzer goes off, they want the ball. They want the control. And so I think that mindset is completely necessary to be able to have a chance at actually being that good. You literally have to have that mindset that you will win. It's not a question in your mind. There's no self-doubt. And I think that, I think you can make the argument that there's a good amount of drivers that in FD that have the skill let's say in the lower 16, that potentially, if they had the confidence or had to really believe that outlook and really kind of really felt that they were the best, they may place a lot better. I don't know that they would win, but I think that there's a tremendous confidence piece to some of the performances in maybe, let's say, the lower half of the field.
Yeah, 100%. I think the an interesting thing to consider is that I think we've reached the plateau of a Formula Drift vehicle. We might make some, there might be some groundbreaking, revolutionary changes in the next 10 years to automotive and whatever. But like, I think in this modern era, or like this era of Formula Drift, like the horsepower since Daigo showed up and brought 1,000 horsepower hasn't continued to increase. If anything, it's decreased. You've got guys showing up with full carbon Kevlar bodied vehicles.
Yeah.
To save hundreds of pounds. So like things like that tell me that like you're really at the plateau of like, basically guys are just looking for any way to spend money to make their car better, right? Like it's not like simple stuff like I'm going to add nitrous, I'm going to add a turbocharger. Like those days are behind us. So I think almost everybody has the ability or the blueprint at this point to build a championship car, right? Like we've seen it with Forsberg's cars. I don't really count Aasbo's because it's kind of like a weird setup, but like James Deane's car, like there are also some of the more simpler cars in the grid. These guys that can consistently win championships. So I think when you boil it down, I think the mental aspect of driving, I think, plays a much larger part than what people give them credit for.
Absolutely. And I just going back to the changes in cars. First, I think there's 2 points that are interesting. One, it really is interesting to watch technology and how cars were, years ago. I think the interesting thing that sticks out in my mind is when Tanner tried to come back, even if it was part-time there, with the Passat that Volkswagen had done. Was it like last year or 2 years ago? 2 years ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And even when he was saying, he's like, how, when they were saying about how he felt about kind of reintegrating into the field, his talk was, a lot of things have changed since I was last, competitive. The angles greatly increased and things like that. So you watch somebody that came from, as a champion in the sport, years before that, kind of catch up to where they were at today. If you were watching that time stamping, you were kind of familiar with Tanner and both sides of the coin there. I think you really had a good look at, wow, look how far things have really come to that point. But will that progressively change over the next 5 years? Probably not. I almost wonder if there's going to be a situation where, like NASCAR does, where there's more templating and kind of trying to keep cars on a standard type of thing to make the driver's skill be the variable. If that's going to happen more, I don't know if that's the future for Formula Drift.
I hope not.
Yeah, me too.
I hear a lot of people make those arguments, but I've never seen, let me put it this way. I can't think of a single racing series where cost saving measures have benefited the racing as a whole.
Yeah, but it's not. I mean, I guess there's a nature of cost savings, but then there was also, especially in NASCAR, there's a lot to it about keeping things on an even playing field.
Correct. I mean, there's like card jigs and this and that, but here's the problem. I think let's talk about that. Drifting is relevant to this podcast. It's relevant to us because it's a tuner based sport,
right?
And I mean, if we start handing people fake Chevy Camaro jigs, to build their race cars, like, I mean, basically right. It's like it's basically like dirt outlaws on pavement,
right? It's
basically what drifting is at that point.
Right. The coolest part that we have is that at some point the chassis that are being utilized are the same things that a lot of these guys are driving on the street. So once that goes away,
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I think that's a huge way that I think fans are drawn to the sport.
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
I think I think there's definitely something to be credited with, say, Vaughn Gittin Jr. and his relationship with Ford brought a large swath of people into drifting that weren't there before that relationship and before their marketing efforts, were built. And if some of these other manufacturers who have a stick up their butt about drifting but use it in advertising all the time, BMW, were to step into drifting, I think that they could as well introduce, like start really pushing and bringing that European market into drifting on like a more official level. Because I think people had always had Fords in drifting for a long time. I think Vaughn started driving his Mustang in '05
Yeah.
or '06 at the latest.
And
But
Ken Gucci had the Mustang. That was
that's true. In '05.
right. That was early
Yeah.
on.
So, but I think like once the Vaughn and like Ford relationship came, and then like Ford started putting like Vaughn in their advertisements, and like they have a SEMA booth with like drifting on display. Like I think it gives it like Ford kind of forced these closed-minded people who own Mustangs to
To
be
respect
like,
it as a sport too.
yeah, exactly. I think that's what it is. Is like I think we're at this point now where like if you're into cars and you're a car enthusiast, you know what drifting is. Like I think we're past the days of being like drifting. What's that? Like everybody
Right.
knows what
Right.
drifting is. Like, do they understand it 100%? No, but like when you see it,
Right.
you're like, oh, those guys are drifting.
I think, you know what, I will say, I think it's getting better. Like, I think that I felt like when I would go to an event 5, 6, 7 years ago, and you'd be watching the stands, nobody cared what position, what place, who won. It was about the smoke and the show, and did cars crash. And I feel like now, when you head to the audience, like, you have a lot of the people that are in that audience that actually they care. They have drivers that they really know and they're rooting for, and they care who wins and they care who loses. So I think that, and I think there's more of a percentage there now that care than not, which I think is a good thing to say. It means that the sport is building enough that people are watching it for the actual sport and not just for the fanfare show of it.
Yeah, I don't think I can argue with that. Honestly, I think Instagram is probably one of the biggest success stories of Formula Drift.
Agreed.
I think that's how a lot of these drivers have built fans, and relationships. Like they're like not famous enough to like not run their Instagram account, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like listen, I don't know, pick a NASCAR driver. Casey Kane isn't updating his Instagram all day.
Right.
And like or like he has a social media team.
Yeah.
Obviously like they make him interact and like do some things, but like on like an hour to hour basis, Casey Kane is not worried about his Instagram page.
Right.
However, when you send a direct message or like comment on Kevin Lawrence's build, photo, and you're like, hey man, why'd you run this cam? And why'd you run a 272 instead of a 262?
You get an answer back.
Yeah, and his reply is from him. Like I said, like famous in our world, but not so famous that they're disconnected. So I think it's cool. Like I think if you're a guy building an RB and Kevin Lawrence is like, oh well, I'm running a 262 cam because da 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 da. I think that's like an instant fan right there, right? Like no one's gonna be like, screw that dude who helped me build my RB.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that Kevin Lawrence knows RBs. I don't know. He's got a lot of heart. I really like Kevin. He's a good dude. And if you're listening and you're not familiar with Kevin and the Njuku team, you should go check them out. They're a good bunch of dudes working really hard. And Kevin, he's got so much heart. And like, there's not a lot of guys out there that are like genuinely just really good people, and he is one. And they're working their tail off to build their program and to. I think Kevin just there is a big jump. I don't think people understand that not all drifting is created equally, and the jump between Pro 2 and Pro 1 is a big jump.
I mean, you can argue that it's not a big jump. I think personally, I think I'd like to see some adjustments in the Pro 1, Pro 2 conversation. I mean, that might be great for like another podcast because I could probably go on about that forever.
No,
but
I think it is. I think we should.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I do think, real quick, I guess, I do think Kevin Lawrence is good. I want him to be the first ever Formula Drift driver from the state of Florida to win an event. Because, I mean, Florida's always had a really strong presence in Formula D, but to my knowledge, no Florida drivers ever won. Someone might be throwing something at their iPhone or however listening to this saying Chelsea DeNova, but
yeah, I get you.
Chelsea DeNova is technically like a Pennsylvania guy. I think, which is basically, his hometown is listed as Doylestown, Pennsylvania, which Pennsylvania has, I think, the most winning drivers from a state, like breakdown states.
We're just going to bring something up, but I don't want to because I'll probably be wrong, and then I'll have just announced it to the world that I'm an idiot. So
Sure. I think you should just throw it out there.
Throw it out there. Where was Forsberg originally from?
Doylestown, Pennsylvania.
Okay, then I'm not an idiot. We'll just go it. Because I know for a long time he was in Maryland, right? Because
he was living in Maryland when he was running his team with MA Motorsports.
Right.
Yeah. But, I mean, I'm sure you know this, but a lot of people may not, especially people from California who don't know geography. Maryland and Pennsylvania are very, very close.
Very close, yes, right. Yes, of course, right. So you can just drive it. It's not a problem. You can use this thing called the car and go right back and forth.
But, I mean, it's like, Baltimore to Philly is what, 2-3 hours by car?
Yeah, I don't even know. I'm trying to think if it's even that much.
That far?
Yeah. It's a pretty straight shot down 95, and there you are. So,
if only we had a machine that we could put this information in and give us the answer.
We don't need that. We don't need those. It's like stopping to ask for directions. Who needs that? All right. So
it's 106 miles.
Yeah. So I mean, that's an
hour
and a half if you don't hit traffic, but you will. So let's say 2 hours. Let's just go 2 hours.
So I wasn't that far off with 2 hours.
No, you're perfect.
Considering I pulled that out of my, proverbial hat.
Yeah.
But trust me, people, especially on the West Coast, like don't know geography. So I'm glad we cleared that up for people.
For sure. So listen, before I wanna cut this thing off soon, so people don't jump out a window. There's one point I think I want to touch on, and then there's two that I want to note for maybe next time. The next time I'm going on the record here. I think we should talk about the Pro 1 versus Pro 2. I think that's
okay.
That's one thing I think we should talk about. Next thing is I really want to talk about your thoughts on some of the different platforms and what's becoming popular in drifting, but not in FD, right? Like what platforms are popular drifting wise that are out there on the streets. I think that's a cool conversation. And a question, and then this point is going to be one of your points, but I want to ask you now, and I think I want to use the same question every single time we do one of these to kind of get an update, which is we just finished 2 events. Where do you think we're looking as far as some of the potential podium placers for the season? I mean, it's really early yet. We get that. But I don't know. Where do you think we stand?
Help me understand the question. Like, are you saying, like, who do I think is going to, like, continue to do well? Like,
yeah, I mean, like, I think even as you already pointed out, there's a 32-point gap that's developed between 3rd and 4th place.
Correct. I think that's just going to continue to grow.
Right. And we've seen that before.
If you look historically, I think come the 3rd, 4th round, there's really only going to be 4 to 5 guys at best. I think there was one year where the championship remained really close because no one was consistent. I can't recall who won that year, but yeah, I think if you look right now, I would basically take the top 6 drivers, and anyone below the top 6, I'd basically just eliminate from contention at this point. So, like, right now, you're Frederick Aasbo at 175, James Deane at 156, Chris Forsberg 155. I still don't really know how to say his name. I don't think anyone says it correctly, but Pichor Wiksek.
It wasn't a bad attempt. I'm not going to even try.
Cool. My Polish is, on the up and up here.
Right.
He's at 123. Forrest Wang's 120, and Ryan Dirk's at 120. And then there's only one other driver that's earned 100 points, which is Pollock. And then, when you get to 8th place, Odi Bachis, he's at 87.
Yeah.
So when you consider, there's already an 88-point gap, which basically is one event.
And I know people are listening and are saying it's so early. How can you? But it really is. It's very statistical, and a lot of the guys that are in the top, they're not poppin' artists. It wasn't an accident. They didn't have a good event. They're consistent. They're great drivers, and that's statistically we've seen this. This happens, plenty of times where that spread will get greater. That top spread will get greater.
Well, right. Let me pull up the 2017 standings real quick. You got a calculator on you? We can do some real time right here.
I think I can work it out. Let me.
Okay, work this out for me. Let's. I'm going to show people how statistics are made in the making right here.
I love it. This is an economics class, also.
Yes. So you got your calculator ready?
I do.
All right. So add 106 plus 36 plus 104 plus 55 plus 71 plus 107 plus 69.
Okay. 548.
Like 600. You have 548?
That's what I have.
I think we missed one.
You're now boring the hell out of people.
No, it's okay.
While we do math.
Yeah, sorry.
Carry the one.
Hold on. I just figured out a better way to do this anyway. So do this math for me instead. This short form. Take 651 and divide it by 8.
Yeah, that was way easier. We should have led in with that.
Sorry, I should have led with that.
We don't edit these, but if we did, this would be a prime spot for it. All right, 81.3. 81.3.
We're at the end of the show here.
This is it. We're right here.
All right. So 81 points. So last year James Deane averaged 81 points around. Okay.
Right.
The maximum amount of points you can get at an event is 100 and something, 106, 107, 109, somewhere around there, depending on your qualifying position.
Okay.
So if you assume that James Deane continues his average of, let's just make it an easy number, 80 points around, that means for Odi Bachis to make up that percent, he basically needs to win 4 events to even just get back to where James is, assuming James continues his event average.
Right. Yeah.
That's a lot.
That kind of says it. That's kind of the punchline, which is it's probable that we'll see something like this happen. So that's why even in round 2, at the end of round 2, you can make a statement like that and say it with enough, confidence. I think we'll revisit this after each round. We'll come right back to this question and kind of see if we're kind of holding through. This is the predictions. We're making real predictions here. Real quick, I know we're going to end this thing, but how about the elusive 100-point qualifying run?
I'm so over it. Can we cuss on this show?
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay. You are from New York, so
right here.
I think it's bullshit. I at this point, I think they're just trying. The judges are just, I don't know if Tanner Faust has paid them off to be like, look, guys, here's $1,000. I want to be the only guy who's ever qualified 100 points. I don't know what it is. Yeah. But it's feeling very shady these days. I'm right.
We'd like to see the addition that calculated up to a surprising 99.
Listen, I don't want to get to a point where Formula D turns into D1, and I don't know if you know how D1 works, but basically there's a 100-point run every event, or there used to be. I think they do an even more confusing system now, but D1 a couple years ago, it was first place 100, second place 99, third place 98, then 5 guys that got 97. I don't know, it seems a little kitschy and kind of rigged standpoint.
And I guess to an extent, it's also about trying to keep this elusive thing that people chase after to an extent. I'm not saying that they're doing that because we don't know that is what happens, but
it's tough. I honestly, I didn't really Aasbo's run. I could see the point loss. I had a hard time with Pior's run. I just thought it was
perfect.
Yes, or as close as we're ever gonna get.
Right. Yeah, that's a tough one. All right, I think we've done it.
So perfect. When are we gonna do a podcast on how to keep your old Mercedes running?
That's a story for another time, and we don't have nearly enough time to explain that to people. There's a whole bunch of psychology and psychosis that has to go into that. So,
I understand. Fair
why
enough.
don't you before we end it up, why don't you tell people where they can find you, Wrecked Magazine, on Instagram?
Yeah, don't bother finding Wrecked Magazine on Instagram, but
Don't.
you're more than welcome to find me. It's just my name, JoeyRedmond. Even that's how you spell my name.
Yeah, that is how you spell your name. All right, that's a wrap. For more info on the podcast, head over to konigwheels.com/podcast. You can also catch us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Konig Wheels USA. That's it. We're out of here. Till next time. Peace.